Welcome back. Now, we continue to build up to the briefing by Acting Deputy Chief Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga, who will explain the mechanics of the Commission of Inquiry into alleged criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system. State Counsel Paul Pretorius, head of the State Capture Commission legal team, joins us now for more. Advocate, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. You've seen the terms of references, I can presume, then at this stage as well. Then, does this offer anything different to what you've seen ultimately, what has been put forward here? Does it offer a little bit more of a stringent sense of what needs to be attained? And does the Commission have a little bit more powers than previous ones?
As to the powers that will be dealt with in regulations that may be passed and may be foreshadowed in this afternoon's broadcast, but the terms of reference are, on the one hand, very wide. They cover 9 categories of entity, including the NPA, the State Security Agency, the Judiciary, Correctional Services, certain metropolitan police departments, and the whole of the South African Police Services. So it's a wide range of entities that must be covered. However, the gateway to the investigations in regard to those entities is whether or not criminal syndicates or drug cartels have infiltrated or exerted undue influence. Now, there are 2 ways of looking at it. One renders the work of the Commission impossibly wide. All those investigations must cover all those 9 categories of entity, all the corruption being dealt with, and then to investigate whether or not there has been undue influence in relation to all those acts of corruption, and possibly wide. Or the Commission could say, we are only going to deal with allegations put before us of undue influence by undue interference by criminal entities, such as criminal syndicates. And in that way, the work will be narrowed. But there's a conundrum, there's a problem, a logical problem. You can only discover whether there has been undue interference if you examine each act of corruption in full. And that is really a difficult challenge. And I'm sure that Justice Madlanga would find a way of addressing that.
You played a very central role then in the Zonda Commission of Inquiry then, as well as head of the legal team there. And having seen, just as you said, the South African Police Service being part of this, the JMPD, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, National Prosecuting Authority, State, etc., 9 entities as you've just spoken about, is the time frame that we're now looking at, because everybody wants this to be done speedily, is there a sufficient time frame to do all this work in? Because that seems like it's going to be the difficult part, considering, as you said, how you'd need to go through this meticulously.
Yes, and depending on the approach that Justice Madlanga takes, and he will foreshadow that this afternoon. But there are other terms of reference. For example, the Commission must look at the role of senior officials in a host of institutions and the role that they played. They must look at the role of any member of the National Executive, whether by action or omission they contributed to the state of affairs being investigated. They must look at the effectiveness or failure of oversight mechanisms. That's the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence, parliamentary committees, crime intelligence, and others. So seen as a whole, it's a huge arraignment of terms of reference that the Commission has to face.
So 1 year is too short a timeline, do you think?
Well, I think 6 months is a huge challenge. Unless they say, we are only going to hear allegations that are presented to us of undue interference, and we're going to limit our inquiry only to those. We are not going to examine corruption as a whole and see whether in that act of corruption an investigation can produce evidence of...
How do these commissions, do you think, drive real change in Advocate? Because they often put recommendations forward, and I know a lot of us then confuse commissions of inquiry with courts sometimes then as well, and a lot of the times what we only get here is recommendations, not rulings. So given that limitation, how can their work still drive change, and what powers do you think then this commission actually has?
Well, the Commission is no more than a fact-finding and report-making entity. Although another term of reference is to look at legislation and see whether it's sufficient in order to deal with the problems it faces, or investigates. But the Commission is no more than a report to the President. Thereafter, it's up to the President to implement, not implement, or take advice on what to implement, which he's done with the Zonda Commission. He's put up another commission to advise him what to do. Interestingly, the President has just issued a report on a progress report on implementation. It doesn't make for great reading, but there it is. It's now been published in its final form, but it is an interim report. So to answer your question briefly, the Commission has no powers other than powers to investigate and the powers that go with the need to investigate. And I must say, much of the work of this Commission will depend on the capacity of its investigation team. That is critical. What capacity does it have to investigate this vast range of terms of reference that are placed before it?
Advocate Pretorius, let's go to that report that has been published then by President Cyril Ramaphosa, which regards to the Zondo Commission of Inquiry then, and ultimately saying that according to the 60 action items that were identified in his response plan, 48% of the matters have been concluded, 23% are on track. What do you make of that progress?
Well, one can approach it in the arithmetical way that the progress report seeks to do. But like any chief executive officer, and this is the most senior executive in our country, the President, you are entitled to judge by outcomes. Corruption has not been halted. Prosecutions have not yet produced results to any significant degree. Law enforcement agencies have not yet been strengthened. They're still awaiting response of the President to the NACAC recommendations. So one is entitled to say, I'm not an expert. I wasn't elected to run the country. I'm entitled to say to the person running the country who took on those obligations, I'm entitled to say, what have you done? And what success or otherwise have you achieved? And so a report is all very well. A report is all very well on the one hand, but and an arithmetical calculation of success or failure, and I must say I don't read it as positively as you do, is all well and good. But finally, the judgment is on outcomes. Has corruption been halted? Have we got through the phase of state capture? Are the law enforcement agencies now properly capacitated and equipped to act effectively? Have we seen the end of large-scale corruption involving goodness knows whom? But why was there a need for a Madlanga commission?
Yeah, big question mark on that one. Just very finally then, just a question around having the judiciary itself in question then when it comes to this commission as well, because that's some of the allegations that had been put forward then by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. What do you make of that? How much does that weaken the institution, if at all, and the question marks that will be asked of it then as well in this commission?
Well, the evidence is not before the commission and therefore not before the South African public. And if the hearings are not in camera in that respect, the allegations will be there. But what an important outcome for the present is it does weaken public confidence in the judiciary, even the allegation. And that's why it's so important that this commission gets to the truth of the matter with a thorough investigation, and hopefully not an investigation that will be rushed to finish prematurely just because of the 3-month and the 6-month deadlines.
Very, very important then. Advocate Paul Pretorius, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's going to be very critical and important then as we head towards that briefing then to happen around 4 o'clock then, we're thinking as well, as the time is set for it. Hopefully we'll chat to you again and unpack a little bit more with you then. That's Advocate Paul Pretorius then, Senior Counsel, of course, then the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Allegations of State Capture's Head of Legal Team then, who's joined us there.